in this track, we're going to hear from some of the sharpest minds and leading-edge innovators in how to design for games and success to be on the cutting edge today and moving forward. Our first speaker is coming to us from work at Electronic Arts, from Marmalade, from Lionhead. He worked on Harry Potter and Fable 2. Currently, he's working on his incredibly innovative game, Last Word, which breaks several boundaries of a couple genres. Would you please welcome Mark Backler to the stage?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mike. So, it's always been hard making games, but these days it's easier than ever with all the new tools and technology that we have available to us. Some people, though, say this is a bad thing with all the increased competition, the talk of indie apocalypse and scary downwards pointing graphs, but I don't think we're at the end of something, I think we're at the beginning. Lots of industries have seen this before, when the breaking down of barriers and expenses means that now everyone with a mobile phone can be a filmmaker, a musician, or a photographer, but far from being bad for these industries, I think it's seen massive new innovation and new talent rising to the top. In games, the barriers of expensive hardware, software, and education have all been coming down. These days, all you really need is a computer and an internet connection to get started making games. So, really, the only barrier that remains is you. Are you passionate enough? Can you come up with a game that people haven't seen before? Can you come up with a game that people want to play? That's what this talk is about. So we're going to be looking at the creative process, 4 secrets to making great games, creativity through productivity, and 3 tools to help you innovate. Let's look firstly at what innovation actually is. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it as the act or process of introducing new ideas, devices, or methods. So if innovation is creating new things, then creativity is how we go about doing this. I always like to start by gathering ideas from all over the place. I see it as a bit like cooking. You take all your different ingredients and combine them together to make something that people haven't experienced before and will hopefully love. There's the well-known saying, good artists borrow and great artists steal, which I think is true, but you need to take from multiple different sources and embed them in what you're creating so it becomes your own. I love this quote, the good game designer welds their theft into a whole of feeling which is unique, utterly different from where it was torn. The bad designer throws it into something which has no cohesion. That is, of course, a quote from T.S. Eliot. Okay, perhaps he didn't say these exact words. He was talking about poetry, but it's brilliant the way that this is applicable to developing games and pretty much any creative industry. There's an excellent video online by Kirby Ferguson called Everything is a Remix, where he looks at everything from The Matrix and Led Zeppelin to Star Wars and all the places that they draw their inspiration from. So you got like here the iconic Star Wars title sequence, which I was surprised to see has been done before, and he sort of breaks down lots of different shots and shows you the different areas or different films that they've been inspired by. He goes on to quote Isaac Newton, talking about standing on the shoulders of giants, which itself was a quote based on something someone said 500 years earlier. He also talks about the elements of creativity being copy, transform, and combine, which, funnily enough, are the exact same elements that evolution uses itself. The main crux of his videos are talking about how connecting ideas together allows us to make creative leaps, which is exactly what Nintendo did with the Wii. They took lots of sort of simple concepts and existing hardware and combined it together to make something that people hadn't ever seen before and that took the world by storm. I think It's always best to innovate as early on in your development process as possible, but I like to think that it's never too late. Even once you've released, you can still innovate in your post-launch marketing, your DLC, or your updates. I find it actually very useful to work with constraints because they give you somewhere to start from and help you to avoid scary blank page syndrome. And there's lots of different constraints that you can use to get you started, whether that's which audience you're developing for, how much you have in terms of funding or your team. There's an excellent talk online from John Cleese about creativity, where he talks about open versus closed mode and how when people aren't being creative, it's often because they're stuck in the closed mode of trying to. It's sort of a mindset when you're getting stuff finished, you're not really open to new ideas, and you're just producing things, getting stuff done. But in the open mode, you're more creative, you're open to different concepts, you're willing to play, which is basically the main ingredient of creativity, sort of freeing yourself and not feeling constrained and in certain ways, and being able to just do whatever you want. He talks about the 5 different requirements of creativity. Firstly, being space, like you want to sort of have a room or an area where you're available to concentrate and to not be disturbed. You then want time in that space, so you could say, I want half an hour this certain day where we're going to think about these ideas. Then you also need time over a long period, so you can say you have one meeting one day, but then the next week you'll then meet up again to think about stuff and just have things tick over in your mind over time, because that's how the best innovations happen, really. You're often not sort of just sitting down trying to think of something at one point on the spot. It's just sort of a slow burn of when you're thinking about things gradually. You then need the confidence to feel free to play and to come up with different ideas, even if they're things that might be stupid. You kind of just want to get everything down there. And then finally, humor, because it's an excellent tool for moving you from the open to closed mode back and forth, which you kind of have to do at lots of different stages. I always find using a notepad really helps with creativity. It's just something about writing stuff down on a piece of paper that keeps the ideas flowing more than staring at a screen when you're sat at a desk. Like I said, with sort of the confidence for coming up with different ideas, you just want to write everything down. Don't filter yourself, even if it's something that doesn't really make sense or you think is a bit stupid. You just need to get it down on the page, to get it out of your head, to free up room for other, hopefully better ideas to pop up. Drawing stuff really helps as well. There's something about the act of drawing that can just spark off different ideas. Saw a really good talk by Dave Perry a couple of years ago at Develop when he was talking about the creation of Earthworm Jim and how the development team, they had a rule that whenever you had an idea, you had to draw it out, because not only did it help communicate that to the other team members, but when people saw you drawing, it might spark off ideas for them or for you. It's also important to take regular breaks and to have a change of scenery. This is a photo I took at Stugan, a video games accelerator in Sweden, when you spend 2 months out in the Swedish countryside and just getting away from your usual environment, meeting new people is really inspiring and can help you come up with lots of new ideas. And if you're an indie, then they're accepting applications now, so I would recommend applying, because it kind of seemed too good to be true to me and some of my friends when we were applying last year, but having done it now, I can say there is no catch. It's a really great experience. So you basically want sustained thought over a long period of time, if possible, to help you come up with lots of different ideas. And that's when you start getting things like when you're in the shower and you have ideas popping into your head, or just as you're going off to sleep. So sometimes it can be good to sort of have a notepad by your bedside so you can scribble down ideas. Also, being active, doing things like going for a walk or a run or dancing or pretty much anything you enjoy that's active can help just have new ideas pop into your head. I think it's really important that you want to innovate as well, and you really care about the thing that you're creating rather than just needing to do it because someone says, I want you to come up with a bunch of ideas for this thing. Jonathan Blow gives an excellent talk called Attempting Deep Work, which is available online, and he quotes one of the founders of Y Combinator, Paul Graham, who says, it's hard to do a really good job on anything you don't think about in the shower. So just illustrating how you really have to be passionate about what it is that you're creating to allow you to do your best work. I also find that when the person doing the designing and the person doing the implementing is either one and the same person, or you have a very clear line of communication between the two of them and they feel free to sort of come up with lots of different ideas, that's the optimum situation, really, because you can get lots of different inspiration from working like that, and also feel free to kind of experiment with things in the code, in the build of the game. Even if you don't know if they're going to work, it's good to just try stuff out, experiment, and you never know what you're going to find from that. Also, finding interesting bugs that can turn into features is actually very useful. And so, yeah, that's why you want your person implementing things to either be able to communicate things to the design team, or to be free to just go ahead and do them. The game I'm working on at the moment, it began as a Ludum Dare game, and I had the idea in the shower, actually. It was a bit like Tetris, and I wanted to have this quote along the top of the screen, and you're dropping words down in a certain order to create platforms for your character so you can reach the end of the level. But then I didn't have any physics on the text to begin with, but I did have on the character. So when I ran the game just to test it really early on, see if it was working, the character dropped down from the top of the screen and landed on the text. And I thought, actually, that's really interesting, and I hadn't seen that in a game before. So I decided to pivot and do that instead, which I did, and then carried on developing that, which has turned into the game that I'm working on at the moment, The Last Word. So one of my favorite ways of innovating and coming up with new ideas is also working with other people. I think you can always come up with more ideas and better ideas when you're bouncing ideas off of a team of you, and you all feel free to just make fun suggestions and you're not worried about getting shut down. Then it can be good to go away, work on stuff on your own, but then come back as part of the group again and sort of do the same thing of helping to develop each other's ideas. You also want to be drawing inspiration from anywhere you can, especially outside of games. Introversion, we're talking about how they were inspired by a trip to San Francisco and looking around Alcatraz for their game Prison Architect. And famously, Shigeru Miyamoto was inspired by his childhood journeys around the Kyoto countryside for The Legend of Zelda. So another thing John Cleese says in his talk is how creativity is not a talent, it's a way of operating. We often think that it's something that people were born with and you're creative or you're not, but that's just not true. We all have the capacity to be creative within us. It's just sort of doing the right things and putting yourself in the right environment and the right mindset to encourage it to happen. So the 4 secrets to making great games. The first one is to identify the experience. You need to know exactly what it is you want to make, what the essence of the experience is. What do you want your players to think and feel as they're playing the game? Ryan Clark wrote an excellent Gama Sutra post called What Makes an Indie Hit, where he talks about the different hooks for a game, which is really important for getting it noticed and for making sure it's something that stands out to people and that they actually want to play. It's well worth reading. He was the developer of Crypt of the Necrodancer, and yeah, he goes into detail on all the different things that he did to make the game stand out. You also need to figure out why you want to make this game. Do you want to make it so people have a fun experience or an emotional experience? Like, what do you actually want them to take away? Next stage is prototyping. I don't think even the best game designer in the world can come up with an idea, implement it exactly as they first thought of it, and have it be an amazing game. It's always a iterative process. You try something out, you see if it works or not, and you change it and move on from there. And if you find things that don't work so well, you can take them out or make them better. And the things that do work well and that people really enjoy, you can then capitalize on more. It stops you from sort of heading off in the wrong direction, and if you're scaling up your team, you don't want to be working on something and then you realize it's untenable part way along. So with a good prototype, you can be agile and save lots of time. Also, game jams are really great for helping you prototype. I love game jams for lots of different reasons, but including that they give you deadlines. While I hate deadlines themselves, I find them very useful because tasks often expand to fill the deadline that you have for them. So if you have forever, that's probably how much your game's going to take. It's also really good for learning new skills. You achieve the impossible. You make a game in a weekend or a few days, and you meet lots of new cool people and learn from them. Companies are realizing these facts, and so you get like Lionhead, Media Molecule, Bossa, sort of all doing game jams for lots of different reasons, but basically because they help their staff to feel free to be creative and to come up with all these new cool ideas that the companies can then use in their different products. Playtesting is a really important part of crafting a great game. You want to get your game in front of lots of different people, and the technique on how you do this is quite important. You don't want to just ask them what they thought to it and go with that. You need to look at them as they're playing the game, because if you say, what did you think? Did you enjoy it? They're probably just going to tell you what you want to hear and say, or what they think you want to hear and say yes. But usually you can tell whether they actually enjoy it by their face. You can see what they're doing with their hands, if they're getting stuck, if they're sort of struggling with the controls, how long are they actually playing it for. It's also really good for coming up with new ideas when you're playtesting. You can see what people, either what they suggest to you themselves. I've had lots of sort of great concepts in my games from people playtesting, and you should try doing this thing, and then I put it in, and it's something that people really love. Or when you're actually watching someone playing the game, it can inspire you and think, maybe I could do this thing, and you get lots of new ideas come like that. You always need to playtest sooner than you think. I think it's kind of innate in us to want to make our game as good as possible before you put it in front of people. But if you wait to that point, then the chances are the things that playtesting is going to show you need to change are going to be so substantial, you're going to be too far along to change them by that point. So pretty much as soon as you've got something playable, or perhaps even before, you want to be trying to test things out on people. You could paper prototype stuff or ask them things, and you just want to get it in front of them and start getting that feedback. You also want to be making sure you do this regularly, so you can get some good feedback, and then you can start implementing it in the game, and then test it on more people to see that it responds, or that it does all the things you're hoping it will. And you want to get a good variety of people to test the game on, not just the people that you think might like the game, but a lot of different types, and also sort of industry people and non-industry people, so you can get professional opinions as well. You also want to make sure you're taking criticism in the right way. It's good if people know how to critique things, but often we can end up ignoring all the good feedback and just focusing on the bad. But while it is important to take the bad stuff on board, you don't want to focus on it too much and sort of end up abandoning the game because of it. The final stage is making sure that you have enough time to polish. I think a lot of games come out and they're not as good as they could be, because this is the important stage where, yeah, you take it from a good game to a great game, and often with development budgets and deadlines, timescales, you find you don't get the time for this, but all the best games seem to have a period of time when they can really test stuff out, add in all the extra little bits of polish that they need. I think this quote is sort of applicable to pretty much all areas of game design, even though it's about coding itself. But so those are the four secrets, and I think they don't just apply to game design, though. Even the act of creating this talk, I identified what I wanted to say early on. I wrote out the main headings. I tested it out, just reading it out loud. I tested it on other people, and then you polish it, you take that feedback and make all those changes. So I think these stages apply to pretty much any creative industry. So being creative is all very well and good, but if you can only do it once a year about a random thing, it's not that useful to you. So you need to be able to channel it by being productive. There's two different types of work. Eric Barker, who used to work at BioWare, has an excellent mailing list called Barking Up the Wrong Tree, when he talks about lots of different things, but one of which was deep work and shallow work. Shallow work being things like meetings, emails, phone calls, kind of stuff that's important and needs to get done, or it's urgent, but then you have the deep work, which is the really important stuff, the coming up with ideas, the planning things out, designing stuff, and actually making something different. And so he described it as shallow work is the stuff that will keep you from getting fired, but deep work is the stuff that will get you promoted. We can often procrastinate from doing the deep work, though, because the shallow work is so much easier to do. There's another quote from John Cleese here, that it's easier to do trivial things that are urgent than it is to do important things that are not urgent, like thinking. I often find that I like to work in 90-minute cycles, because otherwise I think my creativity and productivity can start to tank after that. So you want to have a short break and then come back to it, things refreshed. And then we're talking about being stuck in closed mode, but when you're coming to the end of the project, like, you do need to make sure you're in closed mode, you're not having feature creep, you're just getting things executed and done. So yeah, this quote seems very, very apt here, because I think I've never really released a game that I've been 100% happy with. There's always more you want to do. But sometimes, you just have to kind of realize when to get it out the door and to draw the line. So looking at 3 tools to help you innovate now. There's this excellent book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, where she talks about morning pages, which is every day, first thing in the morning, you just write down 3 pages of sort of stream of consciousness, thought, whatever it is that comes into your mind, even if it's sort of angry, stupid, doesn't make any sense. Even if you can't think of what to write, you just keep writing, I can't think of what to write, and something will pop into your head. And I can't really explain how this works, but it seems to work. It kind of, I think when you get that stuff down on paper in the morning, your mind is kind of freer for the rest of the day, and it can also help you identify things that, like, you want to do in your life in general, and sort of more than just creativity. The next thing is artist dates. So each week you block into your calendar a 2-hour slot where you're going to do something creative or something just for you. You have to do it on your own and defend that time, because it's very easy, like, because it's just you, it feels like it's not important, but actually it is. And whether that you're doing painting, you're working on some project you've been meaning to do for ages, and because you have this 2-hour period, you can, and it's blocked out, you kind of know that you can do whatever you want in that time, and that kind of frees you up to be creative, whereas other times you kind of feel constrained by all the other things you have to do, but when you know this is what you're doing for the next 2 hours, then you can try out all these unusual things. The final point is innovation through leadership. It's all very well and good to innovate yourself, But if you can encourage your entire team to innovate, then what you're creating is going to be that much better. There's an excellent book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich, where he talks about the different qualities of leadership. He has 11 different points. I won't go into them all here, but some of the ones he looks at are sort of being understanding, having attention to detail so that your team follows in that regard, and just working well with the entire team. Basically, going back to the point of making everyone feel confident enough to be creative and come up with different ideas. So we've looked at the creative process, 4 secrets to making great games, creativity through productivity, and 3 tools to help you innovate. So as game developers, I think we're in a privileged position to be able to use these tools and more to create new and interesting experiences that can help move and engage our players. I think we should really seize this opportunity. At the BAFTA Awards last week, Stephen Fry was talking about the obituaries section and how the movies that people make live on even after they do. And I think it's exactly the same thing with games. So really we need to make the most of the opportunity to be able to create these games that can move people and and have an excellent effect. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. That was great.